Welcome back. Welcome back to the Kovacs report. We've got the first round of the DCKO All-Fight Month with Superman versus Captain Atom. Yes, round one has begun. These books go a bit more in-depth into the fights that we're sort of seeing briefly in the DCKO main event book, and they sound pretty interesting. So Joshua Williamson and Izaakse on art. Let's dive in. There's going to be spoilers, so read it first. Like the video if you can, and please do hit subscribe if you get a chance. Actually, here we get the rounds, actually. Let's do that. So round 2 is Aquaman versus Hawkman. Round 3 is Wonder Woman versus Lobo. Round 4 is Titans book. So it's Cyborg versus Swamp Thing. And we get Harley versus Zatanna. Jay Garrick versus Guy Gardner. That's in the Flash book. And then Lex Luthor versus the Demon. And round 8 will be Red Hood versus Joker. Interesting books. Very interesting fights indeed. So we start off with Captain Atom. We find out a little about his history, where he was born, what he stood for, the fact that he became this very, very powerful being. You know, he says, an agent of good, a superhero, a weapon. But there is one role I've always denied the title of. Oh, God, because, I mean, he can control atoms, right? But you can call me Captain Atom. Now, atoms have got a bad rap over the years. They've seen as explosive, a thing of destruction. But they are the stuff that everything is made of. That power inside me is massive. And if I'm going to win this tournament, I need to finally embrace my true destiny. Okay, now we jump back to what's going on in the DCKO book, and Superman is giving Captain Atom a bit of a telling off here. He says, I got to say, you haven't lived until you've been yelled at by Superman. Superman's very, very angry because in the middle of the first round of the tournament in the main event, he punted Supergirl out of the event, and Superman was not happy about it. But he explains, listen, you know, you weren't playing the game. He says, here's what I saw. You were down for the count, big guy. And Lex and Joker and their buddies were winning, and you were too worried about everyone else to do what was needed, because it's all about doing what is needed in this book, okay? He says, what did Batman tell you? Get your head in the game, right? You can be mad at me all you want, but my guess is things are only going to get harder from here. He goes, you and I are going to have a long talk when this is all over. Nathaniel goes, sir, yes, sir, just to rile up a little bit. I mean, who the fuck does Superman think he is here, hey? You're not my dad, Superman. No. Anyway, he's very angry. I get why. Anyway, the first round begins. And he narrates, Superman's not going to like that, but I don't answer to him. Time Trapper said we needed to show no mercy to become the King Omega. We had to be like Darkseid, so I did that. I have the power and the experience. I'm going to win no matter who I have to fight. And of course, he's fighting Superman. Straight out of that argument. So what we find is that there are 3 rounds, of course, and each round they're put in sort of a home turf area. We kick off with Metropolis, which is Superman's home ground. But he's playing to win, Captain Atom. He is playing to win. And he socks Superman. Goes crashing through a building, through many, many buildings, in fact, and plummets towards the ground. And he gets up, and we have this whole chat going through her about doing what's necessary. You know, I'm not going to give up. I'm going to show no mercy. This whole thing that Batman's been trying to drum into Superman's brain, which is sometimes you got to play by new rules. It's a different game now. You can't just do what you've been doing because it's not going to be what's needed to win. But of course, it probably will be in the end, staying true to himself and all that. Anyway. He uses his power of atoms, and he gets his hands to sort of change into red sun energy on one hand and kryptonite in the other, and starts sucking the living hell out of Superman. He's got Superman on the ropes here. He starts pulling out all of the sort of solar energy out of him. He's draining him. He's going all frail and skeletal like. You can see he's just deteriorating, right? And then boom, KO, round 1 goes to Captain Atom. And you see the Heart of Apocalypse start firing up, right? Because that Omega energy is going in, because that's what this is all about. It's powering up that Heart of Apocalypse to gain the power to take Darkseid on. And he's like, wow, the Omega energy. And it's coursing through his veins, though. You can feel it. And it starts changing me a little bit. You know, you can feel the fact. Remember, it's bad energy. It's bad energy. Anyway. They regenerate, of course, because this is basically Scott Snyder's wet dream. What would you call it? As one commenter said, computer game fantasy. And it is that. It is exactly that. Anyway, things start getting a little bit higher. Captain Atom isn't letting go. He said, I'm not sorry for taking out your cousin or kicking your ass, Boy Scout. This is the whole damn point. We're at war, and I'm going to do what I need to do to win. But Superman's trying to stay true. Anyway, round 2 begins, and they see different versions of themselves from the past, the future, and everything else. And they need to pick one of those versions of them for the second round. And they do. And we find out that Captain Atom has chosen Monarch, okay, a god who controlled time and space. I guess this is someone he becomes in the future, in the past, at some point in the DC universe. And Superman takes Superman Prime from the 853rd century, and they are going to fight now. They are at Captain Atom's sort of hometown here, so now he's on his home turf. Now, he goes in for the kill, but Superman just flies off. He's like, you're running. He's like, I'm not running. I'm not running. I'm going towards the sun so I can suck out as much of that solar radiation energy into my body, all right, to take you on. And what he does is he breathes out every single bit of power that he has, and he freezes everything. He freezes everything. He says, I can't move. What did you do? He says, I used every bit of power I had. Atoms and quantum fields can be slowed down when exposed to extreme cold, including us, but I've just enough power left after a lifetime in the sun to outlast you. So he doesn't need to necessarily win here. He just needs to stay alive long enough for KO. So it's 1-1 here. Now, the fires fire up again in the heart of Omega. Sorry, the heart of Omega. The heart of Apocalypse with the Omega energy. And Captain Atom's getting angrier and angrier. You can see that sort of negative energy that he's got in, that Omega energy, is starting to affect him a bit. And he's like, I know how to win this time. I know how to win. But Superman, he ain't going to do nothing different, okay? Because he's staying true to himself, because he is the big Boy Scout. So Captain Atom says, listen, instead of choosing one form, I will choose all of them. So hold on a minute. I thought you could only... Look, it's actually quite a good punch-up book. I'm not gonna say it's a bad book, but the rules keep changing. It's a bit odd. So now you can take all of those, not just one. So that's what he does. He wraps himself up with all the powers of all the versions of himself, past, present, future, and he becomes the all-power. Okay, and this is where we get the science bit. He says, "You fool." Okay, because Superman just stayed himself. He says, you fool, I can control time, space, and all reality with all my selves combined. I am the heart's equal. And as the heart tries to create a new arena, I will use it as an opening to steal back control. We don't need to fight each other now. So he's going to the heart of Apocalypse to try and grab reality itself, which confuses me because this needs to be powered up, right, to be powerful enough to take on Darkseid. I'm not too sure how that works. Superman says, no, you're cheating. You're cheating. I'm not cheating. I'm just taking this fight directly to the Game Master. Time Trapper warned us the heart would defend itself. And that's what it does. It does start defending itself. And what happens is it's starting to use all of those powers that Captain Atom has absorbed against him. And you see all these realities shattering. Now we get even more sciencey. He says, when we entered the tournament, the heart showed me the world I could create. With its power, I created a world where a soldier like me isn't needed. But it was so much more than that. For the first time in my life, I felt whole. And that's what he wants to feel. He wants to have control over his own future. Now, this is what he wants for himself, because part of this whole, like, once you get the power of the Heart of Apocalypse, you can reshape the world, okay, into whatever you want. Now, everyone's, of course, going, well, I'd make it better this, I'd make this better for everybody. I don't end hunger, end famine, end all these things. But Superman, right, they say, you'll just turn it back to the way it was because you don't believe, you have the right to change anything. That's what Superman is obviously going to do here. So they start fighting, of course. Superman gets blasted, but some stuff starts going a bit bad. He says, if the heart wants to turn my history into a weapon, I'll use it. Because as you can see, all his histories are shattering behind him. And that's what happens. That's what happens. They start breaking down. But he says, you know what, history means nothing to me. What's the point of having it if I'm not willing to sacrifice it to save everyone? This has to be done, and I'm the one to do it. And of course, that's the heart messing with his head. And he says, eat an origin bomb. I'm not quite sure what that is. Again, this is quite a good book, but these little moments of like, what? What the hell? This sort of end bit is really odd. So he hits Superman with an origin bomb. And everything is then gone. My past, my life, all broken. But it was worth it to finally have control over my own future. That was two. The fight is over. He thinks he's won. But guess what? He hasn't quite won. Because apparently what this has done is it's fused Superman's powers with Captain Atom's powers and made him this like even bigger, stronger, more badass Superman. And he absolutely pummels him, absolutely kicks the living hell out of him, and he wins. There we go. But at what cost, of course? Victory. Now, the engine starts firing up again in that half apocalypse, starting to feel that Omega energy, and then we prepare for the next round. Now we jump back, little interlude, which is continues after the scene at the end of DCKO, where it is revealed that Booster Gold is actually contains the spirit of Darkseid. He's part of the tournament. He's been hiding in secret, and he's fighting Time Trapper because it's been revealed to him. And Time Trapper is also a future evolved version of Doomsday. I know it's getting complicated for me anyway, as not a big DC fan. And they're fighting. He says, because I've allowed this charade to go on long enough, the pits are burning with Omega energy. That belongs to me. He goes, no, I know what you are. How did we miss this? He goes, your hope blinded you, Time Trapper, your true reality. Because I always hated you, Doomsday, as he throws him out into space, just drifting there. He said, it bothered me that anyone thought a monster like you could challenge a god like me. Funny, he calls him a monster. But you were right in what you told the Justice League. There were no paths to a future that was not mine. None. They really should have listened and prepared themselves for the order I bring. You cannot fight Darkseid and win. And of course, the other members in the Watchtower there are Groot, and I forget who that is. That's the other sort of time person. He's sort of sneaking up behind him with a giant scythe, and that's where it ends. So yeah, do you know what? It was fun. It was fun. If you can get around how silly this event is, and it is balmy, all right? It's like, you know, Scott Snyder has risen the ranks, and now, you know, he can live out those childhood dreams of making comics that he probably wanted to read when he was a kid, which is fine. It's all fine. And there's just a few little weird things in here, which, like the end, just suddenly just speeds up at its radical pace with this weird conclusion. But all in all, it was fun. It was just good fun. You know, it's what you expect from this, because I went into this not looking for a super serious, you know, comic. I was going into it looking for just a bit of dumb fun to fill a coffee break, right? And that's what we got. We've got some nice art. We got a punch up between two heroes, and the next round is on its way. So if this sets the sort of standard for what the other 7 books I think they're going to be, for the next fights, then you know what to expect. It's just a bit of fun, a big punch up, to 7 more rounds as we lead into the end of DCKO. So there we go. Not bad at all. There we go. I actually did a positive review for a book today. You know, things like that do happen occasionally. There we go. Those are my thoughts. Let me know yours. Hopefully you've liked the video. Hopefully you subscribed, and hopefully you've definitely going to come back for another video. So take care. We'll see you soon.